If you haven't heard, Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel over the night, and even though it didn't do a lot of damage, as far as I know at the moment, there aren't any deaths. There is a child, a Palestinian child, who was seriously injured by shrapnel from an interceptor missile in the south of Israel. But yeah, it's important to start to think about why this happened, what this means, and kind of what the bigger picture is. So obviously, this is happening in the context of the war in Gaza. And over the past few months, mostly over the past few weeks, as more and more international scrutiny has started to kind of turn against Israel, so many Western countries that are nominally allies of Israel have really started to put pressure on Netanyahu to resign, have started to distance themselves from the actions of the Israeli government, have started to call for new elections. Even a bunch of them were talking about recognizing Palestine as a state. We're seeing a slow turn of basically Israel has managed to completely burn every single shred of goodwill that they had after October 7th. And Netanyahu is facing a lot of pressure to resign from foreign countries, but also from massive protests in his own country. Netanyahu was not popular when he was elected, but now his popularity is completely shot. He's basically done. He's basically clinging onto power barely by his fingernails. This is leading a lot of analysts to point out that it looks like Netanyahu is basically trying to prolong the operation in Gaza, because as long as there's this massive operation in Gaza, it's kind of off the table that there would be a complete change of government in Israel. For example, when Chuck Schumer says Netanyahu needs to go and there needs to be elections as soon as possible kind of implies, well, it's not really possible right now. When the Gaza thing is done, when things have quieted down, definitely there should be new elections, is what he's saying. All of this brings us to the attack on April 1st by Israel on the embassy, the Iranian embassy in Damascus. So this killed a couple of people, in like I think 7 people. Israel, Damascus, Iran embassy. "16 killed, 7 Islamic Revolutionary Guard, 5 Iran-backed militiamen." As far as I know, among all of these, there were 2 pretty important... Wait, was this? Yes. Pretty important Iranian commanders. There was no universe in which this attack was not going to be met with a response from Iran. There is no way you can bomb an embassy of another country, obviously, and that other country not just go, hey, that's not nice, don't do it again. Like, there was no way there wasn't going to be an actual response from Iran. And when Israel did that, they knew there was going to be a response from Iran. That was factored into their decision. So the thing is, Israel, even though they're doing something that has to have a response from Iran, they don't really want to be at war with Iran, but they know that Iran really doesn't want to be at war with Israel. In part because Israel is backed by the United States, also partly because Israel has a nuclear bomb, or has many nuclear bombs, and Iran doesn't, as far as we know yet. And that's probably a factor. But nevertheless, Iran had to respond. Even when the United States killed Soleimani, the Iranian general, in 2020, Iran responded by attacking at least one US military base in the region, and this time it's their biggest enemy in the region, Israel, who's couple of countries over, yeah, they were going to send something over just to save face at the very least, to look good with their own people. So that's essentially exactly what they did. And they sent a few hundred drones and some missiles of various types. What's interesting with that choice is that drones are really slow. Like, not really slow, but it's 2 countries over. It takes multiple hours to get there. Iran has weapons that can close that distance way faster, but instead they're like, oh, be careful, we're sending you these things that are going to be there in 2 hours. It's going to be really bad. We'll show you how bad you were. And they're sending these weapons with a huge kind of warning flag and a huge announcement for Israel to get ready. And Israel literally has the most famous air defense system in the world. Yes, exactly. Drones would get shot down by the Iron Dome anyways. That's the entire point. Now, they did combine that with ballistic missiles and other types of missiles at the same time, but they're throwing that at the most famous air defense system in the entire world. So they knew that this was essentially going to do either very little or nothing at all. Someone else was pointing out, an analyst was pointing out that the drones are controlled by GPS, and Israel has GPS jamming technology, so there is no way for those drones to hit their targets anyway, even if they weren't shot down. It was essentially sending a fireworks display over to Israel. They knew it was going to blow up in the sky, and they could, it's essentially all bark and no bite. That way they can say, hey, we showed them who's boss, and we sent them a warning. It is pretty much literally Iran sending Israel a message that they can do this. This is unprecedented. Iran has never attacked Israel in this way. Israel has never bombed an Iranian embassy, as far as I know, as far as I can remember. We're pretty much in uncharted territory, but what is reassuring for now is that Iran doesn't want a war. They know they would lose that war because the US would be on the side of Israel, among other countries. And Israel kind of doesn't want a war either. They just, mostly, what they actually want is to send a message to their Western allies. But yeah, in addition to Western countries saying Netanyahu needs to resign as soon as possible, as soon as the war is over, there also is a massive push in Western countries for those countries to condition military aid to Israel on what they do. So there was a court in the Netherlands a few months ago that ruled that the Netherlands shouldn't give military aid to Israel anymore because it was likely to be used in a genocide. There's a huge movement among lawmakers in basically every Western country, except a couple that are just going to unconditionally support Israel no matter what happens. But the UK, I think France, the US is talking about conditioning military aid as well. There is a push for that. And Israel getting attacked by Iran in this way is super convenient for them to then turn to those countries and go, hey, how dare you talk about conditioning military aid? This is what we're up against. This is the second most dangerous military in the region after us, and they're actually potentially an existential threat if we don't have military aid from you guys. Israel would probably win in an all-out war against Iran anyway, but it is definitely an important factor that they can then point to that attack and kind of silence those people saying we need to condition military aid. And it's pretty much the definition of cry-bullying, honestly. It's like imagine you go up to someone and you slap them in the face, and then when they punch you back, you run over to the school teacher or something and go, hey, he punched me. Support, like, you should do something. You should punish him. Or you shouldn't give me the means to fight back or whatever. And that's essentially what they're doing here after last night's attack, which was prompted by them blowing up an embassy and killing a bunch of, like, in blowing up one building, Israel blowing up one embassy building that belongs to Iran, killed 16 people. Iran sending up to 350 drones and missiles to Israel killed no one as far as we know. And yet now Israel is saying Iran has launched a direct attack from within its territory of more than 200 UAVs, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. The attack is a severe and dangerous escalation. I confirm Israel's request to convene a meeting of the Security Council immediately to unequivocally condemn Iran for these grave violations and immediately act to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Like, remember, Iran didn't kill anyone. They would have if were not for the Iron Dome, but they didn't kill any Israeli last night. Israel did when they bombed the embassy. So it's a little weird that they would do that. What can we say from this other than this is super convenient for Netanyahu? This is essentially exactly what he wanted, probably to some extent what he was hoping for when he attacked that embassy. From Israel's point of view, you can say that sure, like they bombed that embassy because it had important commanders, and it is true that Iran has a lot of influence on different militias. They have an influence on Hezbollah, which is attacking Israel from the north. Israel is also attacking Hezbollah as well at the same time, and Israel has been escalating tensions at the northern border for a few weeks now, and also seemingly trying to maybe provoke them into a broader conflict, or at the very least not trying to de-escalate the situation, which is what a lot of other countries are saying that they should be doing. Iran has influence over Hamas, they have influence over the Houthis, they have influence over a bunch of other militias in the region. So from Israel's point of view, you can argue, yeah, those military commanders were important targets, but nevertheless, you bombed an embassy. You knew they were going to respond in some way. And the response that they got, which was, like I said, essentially a fireworks display, is probably the best case scenario for everyone, because Iran did save face. They managed to say, oh yeah, we did something. We responded to the embassy attack. Netanyahu got what he wanted. He can tell his allies, hey, how dare you condition military aid and whatever, and say Iran is bad and we need to condemn them at the UN Security Council. So he gets what he wants, and he gets to kind of use this to say, hey, it's really dangerous to call for my resignation with all of these tensions that I'm kind of causing. But yeah, if we're in a really dangerous situation and we don't have a government because you called for my resignation, that would be really bad. So I have to stay in power as long as possible, guys, is basically what he's getting out of this. And hopefully that's as far in terms of, obviously, the broader region is very tense right now. The situation with Hezbollah could escalate dramatically. Obviously, the situation in Gaza is still incredibly dramatic, and at the same time, but the last night's attack hopefully will remain kind of a self-contained individual, not leading to anything further, is the best that we can hope for. But yeah, sometimes it's the nature of escalations. I'm hopeful that this is basically all that's going to happen from this specific thing, but escalations sometimes happen despite people's wishes. You know, if you've seen the I think one of the best illustrations of escalations leading to war in any movie or piece of fiction that I've ever seen was the second Planet of the Apes movie from the recent trilogy, where every single character doesn't want to go to war. Like, all of the important characters definitely do not want to go to war, but it's like a cascade of dominoes falling one after the other, where it's like individual decisions are rational. You completely understand why they're being made, even though you know, oh, this is not going to be good. And by the end, when the war happens, you're like, that was super predictable, but it was basically inevitable. And sometimes that's how it happens. So hopefully that's not going to be the case this time. But it's definitely concerning. We are pretty much in uncharted territory. But as far as we know right now, for the moment, between Israel and Iran, things should quiet down, hopefully. But thus doesn't do anything to help the people in Gaza, unfortunately. Don't forget to like and follow. This was a clip from the weekly Barely Informed live stream. You can catch it every Sunday on the main Barely Informed YouTube channel. And please support us on Patreon. The link for both of those are down below.